good condition, and the moon will be rise from 6:20 p.m. And we will see the brightest and the largest moon at around 6:30 p.m. So you don't have to wait until the midnight. You can also appreciate the moon in early evening. And also we have a lot of astronomy fans who are here. They're also coming here to appreciate the moon. So maybe I can give you some information about the weather condition of Shenyang city. And yesterday there are a light rain and light snow. And after the snow, and the sky become very clear and very blue. With the clear sky, we can have a very favorable condition to appreciate the moon. Just in about 10 minutes, we can start to observe and appreciate the moon. So let's experience the whole process when the moon rising from the eastern side, and we can appreciate the moon. So what is the supermoon? So what are some of the techniques that we can use to observe the moon? And today we have a special guest here to help us to address all of those questions. So we have Mr. Yu, an expert from the astronomy department from Shenyang. Please say hi to our viewers. Hello, I'm Mr. Yu Jingchi from the Astronomy Association in Shenyang City. And maybe you can share with us some of the experience and tell us some stories about the supermoon. So first of all, I have a question. So what is the supermoon? What is the origin of this name? So actually, this concept was raised in around 1970s. It is a concept. So literally, it means that the moon is larger than a regular moon, maybe 10% larger than a regular size. And so for this year, actually, we experienced the supermoon in 3 consecutive months, in January, February, and March. And especially in March, the moon will be 40% larger than a regular moon, and also we have a 30% brighter than a regular moon. So when we are about to appreciate the moon, we don't have to wait until the midnight. Because of the impact of the atmosphere, at the time when the moon is rising to the sky, we can see a larger and a brighter moon. So even though it is just on the rise, but still it is brighter than a regular moon. So, and we know that the moon is actually rotating around the Earth. So what is the orbit for the traveling of the moon? So when we say the moon is actually traveling from the Earth, why we have a supermoon, meaning that why the size of the moon keep changing all the time? Because the orbit is actually in the shape of oval. Because of that, from time to time we will see the moon is at a perigee, and sometimes it was at a apogee. So when the moon is traveling towards the perigee, so that the moon is in a larger size, the size of the moon is quite fixed. However, the distance to the Earth is quite different. That's why you can feel different in size. As you mentioned, supermoon, meaning that the moon is actually traveling towards the perigee. It is approaching to the Earth, and also a full moon is occurring at the time. That's correct. It is a coincidence. For the supermoon we will be viewing today, we actually experience a distance change and also time differences between the Earth and the moon. Sometimes if the moon is very close to the Earth, however, if it is in the shape of a crescent, we cannot feel the brightness of the moon. But if it is in a full moon, then we will see a supermoon in the sky. That's an excellent answer. So we have to fulfill 2 conditions in order to see the supermoon, meaning that first of all, the moon have to travel to the perigee, and also the moon will experience a full moon so that we can see a supermoon. So I would say this is a coincidence. when these two conditions are fulfilled. So, as we can see, there are many kinds of lunar phases. Even though the moon is at the perigee, if it is not in full moon, we cannot see the bright moon. So, as we have just mentioned that we have seen 2 times of supermoon. The first time is in January the 21st. The second time was at February the 19th, which is the Lantern's Day, which is quite impressive. And today we will have the last time of the supermoon. It is so I would like to ask whether it is rarely seen for this kind of supermoon. So can you give us more explanation about this kind of cosmic scenario? When we define supermoon, meaning that the moon is actually 10% larger than a regular size of the moon. So each year we will have this kind of scenario. So it is not a rarely seen scenario. So most of the time, different kinds of lunar phases are actually integrated to our daily lives and also carries the aspiration. So I think it is a good time for us to gather together to appreciate the moon and spend joyful times. And as you have just mentioned, if the size of the moon is 10% larger than the regular one, we will call it a supermoon. And I believe some people will bring the telescope to observe the moon. So can we observe the moon from our naked eye? Actually, 10% larger than the regular moon. We do not quite see the differences from our naked eye. Maybe you can share some of the pictures with us. One is the supermoon, the other one is a regular moon. Let's take a look. So maybe the left one is the size of the supermoon. Right. The left one is showing the size of the supermoon. On the right side is a regular moon, meaning that the moon is actually at the apogee. You can see in terms of the size, there is a 40% differences, and for the brightness, it's around 30% differences. And tonight we will see the moon rising from the eastern side, and it will be very impressive. If there is no reference, I cannot tell the differences from my naked eye, but if I look at the photos, I could see this is quite a difference. So let's take a look. The left side actually showing the picture of a supermoon. On the right side is a regular moon. It is quite a difference. But if you look at this sky with your naked eye, maybe you cannot tell the difference. So as you have been working in this field for many years, you must have some experience to share. As an astronomy fan, we will actually pay more attention to the lunar surface, for example, the craters and the surfaces of the moon. And back in the old days, there were many astronomers. Through their observation, they also can find the craters on the lunar surface. So we are quite proud of what they have done in the past. Well, actually, I'm quite eager to see the supermoon. We're looking forward to see the moon. So as I just note that the moon will start to rise at around 6:12. So it will be rise from the eastern side. So we are like 3 minutes to see the supermoon. Well, we are talking about the time when the moon will start to rise. But actually, I think probably it will take 5 more minutes for the moon to rise up in the sky. But as you can see, there are many architectures, buildings clustering here, so that maybe it will cover some of the views for us. So maybe for this time around, it is the favorable time for us to view the moon. That's right. We think from this location, we can see a bright or even a golden supermoon. Just in a few moments, we will see the supermoon. Let's see how bright it is and how big it is. And also you can see there are many visitors and citizens gathering here. They are here and looking forward to the supermoon, as I have just mentioned. Today we will see the last supermoon, even though it is not a rarely seen scenario, but through observing the supermoon, it is a good experience to learn some of the knowledge about the astronomy. You also mentioned that there are a lot of ancient astronomers who are studying the moon and the lunar exploration. And I also realized some of the photos you are taken, probably that was took by some of the astronomy fans. Let's take a look. Is there any direction for this photo? Well, actually, there's no direction because all of these are relative. So this is the surface of the moon. I realize some of the area are quite dark. So what are those? Well, these are actually craters surrounding on the lunar surface. All of these areas are craters. And actually, for many of the areas, these have been observed by the ancient astronomers. If you are interested, and probably you can find one of the crater and name after your name. So if I can find some place on the lunar surface, and there's never anyone spotted those areas, probably I can name that place after my name. And also I see some specialized pattern on the surface. So what are those? Those are also craters. This is also because of some of the collision of the debris. From time to time, there was some asteroids and also some debris clashing towards the Earth. And some of the debris are actually left on the lunar surface, which are causing different shapes of the craters. So this is actually the near side of the moon. We have never seen the backside of the moon because for the backside of the moon, the terrain is more complicated. So this is the area that we can observe. We took this photo in February this year. As we have just mentioned that on February the 19th, we have another round of a supermoon. And this is quite an excellent photo, which was taken by a specialized equipment and camera. And we can see the moon is quite bright and quite large. And we also notice some of the details, for example, the craters, some of the collisions from the debris. And however, we cannot see the backside of the moon. So how do you know what it looks like on the backside of the moon? As you may notice, in China also launched some of the rovers. They also transmit some of the photos to show the situation of the backside. So the backside have a more complicated terrain. So we always see the good side of the moon.
The moon always shows its best surface to us. This is quite a moving story. The moon is always with the Earth and is secretly protecting the Earth. This is something we've never heard before, and I feel this is intriguing. Now it's around 6:14. I think there are some whiteness in the sky. On this street, we can see all the lights, and then we will see the moon rising up from that direction. So if we're lucky, we can see something just like this picture. We have taken this picture with professional equipment, and we have added several filters in order to see less light on it. So maybe we will not see the exact picture of this. So do you take pictures when the light is too strong? No, because when the light is strong, we could lose many details, such as the craters. For us amateurs, we can only see the roundness and brightness of the moon. We cannot see too detailed secrets about the moon. We cannot see how much protection the moon is providing with the Earth. Without the moon shielding collisions from comets, maybe our planet Earth will have these. So what do you think have impressed you the most? In every month's middays, we can see under the refraction of the atmosphere, the feeling and aroma of the moon is really desirable. We also have several legends and myths about the moon in the ancient time. It reminds us of stories that our parents told us when we were children. That is something we cannot gain in normal times. About the Forbidden City in Shenyang, it is closed in afternoon. Why did we choose this location to observe the moon? Because in this structure, we will preserve a feeling where we can trespass the time, maybe travel back to the ancient times. The Forbidden City is closed as usual. Now we are just standing outside on the street to observe this supermoon. We have several locations in Shenyang which are desirable to observe the supermoon. Which are the places that you usually go to take pictures? We have a park. We have the television tower. And in these locations, we can see the moon rising up earlier than others. I think we can see some light in the eastern half of the sky. Actually, the moon cannot emit light. The lightness from the moon is just a reflection from the sun. How is the relation between the Earth, the moon, and the sun? I think this is a very delicate situation. For the sun, the sunlight brings us warmth, and it breathes everything. It brings us heat. It is the origin of every species in the Earth, and the moon serves as the satellite for us, and it has shielded us from disasters such as collisions, and we're fortunate enough to live to this day. Is that so? The collisions are shielded by the moon. Moon gains some gravity to some extent, and some asteroid would collide into the moon. Why is there no life on the surface of the moon? Indeed, after all these collisions, life are just not possible on the surface. Now we're on the street just before the Shenyang Forbidden City, and this is one of the best places to observe the moon. Now we have the feeling to trespass time. Later we will see the moon rising up from the red wall, and Mr. Yu has just introduced us with some good locations to observe the moon. But today's weather is not desirable enough. It is cold for us, so we need to maybe wear some more clothes. And also we can see the moon from the television tower because the position is quite high and people can see the moon earlier than others. Also, you can go outside to the suburbs of Shenyang City. to observe the moon, but wherever you go, you need to wear some more clothes to fend off the coldness. Now it's 6:20. I think the moon has risen up, but is just behind the constructions. The sun rises pretty quick. I think the speed is quicker than the moon. The speed of the sun and moon rising up is comparatively the same. We have been looking into some information on the internet. Around 9 a.m. this morning, the moon is at its perigee to the Earth, but in daytime we could not see the moon. Does this count as a supermoon? Yes. This difference in time is not much for us, and we should choose an appropriate time to observe the moon, and we do not need to pursue the best statistics. Around 9:40 plus this morning, the moon was the closest to the Earth. So, what is the time that the sun rises up tomorrow? Around 6 a.m. So throughout the night, the moon will be stunning. Around midnight, the moon will arise at its best degree, and there is nothing that can shield us from seeing the moon around midnight. Are both these astrological telescopes? How can we see this? How can we see the moon with these? A lot of astrological enthusiasts would connect these two cameras and then take better pictures. Now we can see the moon is rising up. Around 6:30, we can see the most beautiful moon in the sky. You can see at the corner of the building, the moon is now up in the sky. This light is... We can see the light, but if you go here, you can see the moon is rising up quickly. I can see it is really quick, the speed. Just as we speak, if there is a reference, the position can be seen pretty quickly. It feels that the moon is really far away from us. Now we can only see 1/3 of the moon. Why is it red? This is also because of the refraction of the atmosphere. When it rises up to some extent, it will not be as red as now. It is because the refraction of atmosphere from red and then to yellow, and then it would show the white. The speed of the moon rising up is really quick. Just as we speak, it has risen up into the sky from 1/3 to over half. The moon is very round and it looks golden. Feels very far away from us. This is my first time observing the moon like this. The feeling is quite desirable for us. There are some lights on the ground. Now there is less than 1/3 that's hidden in the clouds. Now it's basically come out. Our cameraman, through the astrological telescope, has shown us with the moon. This is really stunning. The moon is really big. Now it's basically out in the sky. The speed of rising up is really quick. If there's a reference, then we would be amazed at its speed. Now behind me, a lot of citizens are gathering. They can't help but taking out their phones and take pictures of the moon. So our waste in the cold wind is not a waste. This phenomenon is actually existing in our life every minute, every moment. And we can see this beautiful scenery every minute of our life. This is actually my first time to see the moonrise, because most generally people would see the sunrise. As you said, it would bring less red when it rises up to a higher degree. When it goes to the middle, the color will be more white. Now it looks golden, and as Chinese are fascinated by the color gold, I think maybe most of you are just like me. You do not have time to observe the intriguing phenomena in our daily lives. Because this is my first time finding out that the moon is gold. Just now it was just under the gate. Now it's up in the sky, above the gate. That's why we always say that the process of taking pictures of the moon is rather hard, because it requires astrological telescope. We have professional equipment to follow up the trajectory of the moon rising up. Then we will have better effects. Now I can see some astrological enthusiasts bringing their telescopes and phones to take pictures. I see everyone around me is taking pictures. They're all excited to see a stunning moon. Hi, do you think this is beautiful? Yes, absolutely. Do you come here by accident, or you have come here specifically for the supermoon? I was just walking around the neighborhood and I found out the news. Is it because of the solar term of today? Today is March the 21st, which is the Spring Equinox. Does it have any direct relations with the solar term? No, it's just a coincidence. When you see a beautiful moon like this, you would feel joyful inside. A lot of citizens and astrological enthusiasts, I have asked them, why do you like astronomy so much? They have answered me that enjoying and observing the moon after a day of work is a very desirable thing to do. It is very pleasant to witness the rising of a supermoon together with the citizens of Shenyang. We're really all excited, and I can see that all the people around me have taken out their phones.
So actually, Chinese people values the moon, especially for the ancient people. They're actually writing up like poems about the moon. They actually endow with some of their aspirations and some of their feelings to the moon. And now you can see the moon is actually rising up to the gate. So now maybe we can discuss how the ancient people write about the moon. And also we have a vice president in the literature department from Liaoning University. My name is Li Dong. You can see the moon is rising, and you can actually experience the whole process. You must be very delighted. Even though it is a little bit cold here, physically we feel cold, but I feel very excited. Especially I learn a lot about the astronomy. And also we witness the whole process for the rising of the moon. At the beginning, we can see the moon is at the lower point, but now we can see a bright moon lighting up the sky. So now we are actually in the time of the supermoon. Well, we can feel that actually the moon is hanging up in the sky, actually reflecting on the gate, and we feel very relaxed. And the location, we are taking photos here. We are carefully selecting this location. As we have just talked about, we are at the center point of Shenyang. Actually, it is in the Imperial Palace of Shenyang. This is a hotspot area for tourism who are coming to Shenyang. Because for the Imperial Palace of Shenyang and Beijing, these are two complete architecture clusters in China, and also there are a lot of history associated with the Imperial Palace. And for Shenyang, it used to be the capital in the ancient towns, and it used to be a royal imperial palace in ancient times. And also we built a imperial museum here, which also store many treasures here. So I think this is a perfect location for us to observe and appreciate the moon here. When we are appreciating the moon, we are also thinking about our past and our future. And we may think that in the past, the ancient people, they're actually looking at the same moon. And I believe at this specific moment, there were many people who are doing the sky watching. They are watching at the supermoon. So it feels like we break the barrier of space and time. We actually connected all of us together. Now we can see the moon is rising up a little bit. It's already above the gate. I'm not sure if you can feel this vibe with the rising of the moon. Actually, it is quite bustling in the Imperial Palace. Even though it is quite cold, there are many people here to appreciate the moon. It is quite bright and beautiful for the moon. It feels like the moon is actually giving out the warmth to all of us. And as you have just mentioned, that it feels like we are staying back to the history. And a lot of poets, they actually endowed with their aspirations to their poems to write about the moon. Why was that? Why people want to write up their aspirations by using the moon? I think when the ancient people looking up to the sky, I think moon as a selection body, it is the most closest selection body that they can observe. Even though the moon is considered as a satellite to the Earth. So for the ancient people, they actually have some legend for the moon, so they are connecting ourselves to the moon. That's why they write up articles. They would like to put some of their emotions on the moon. So for this moon, it just looks like a mirror. It does not reflect the lights from the sun. They're actually reflecting some of the emotions of the ancient people. That's why we can see a lot of poems, like for example from Li Bai, from the poet Su Shi. So most of them are actually writing up poems based on the moon. From lunar calendar, we are talking about the idea of month. And back in the old days, actually a lot of astronomers, they are also studying the moon. Maybe they are using a different way to observe the moon. So, for example, moon is actually a reflection of month. These two are actually interconnected. As for myself, I did a lot of homework to learn about the history of moon. So for one cycle, for the moon to rotate around the Earth, the whole period can be calculated as 1 month. So when we are at the 15th of one lunar month, it meaning that we will be seeing a full moon. So actually, full moon also carries good aspiration of the people. So from this sense, we can see we are actually trying to close up the distance between the people and the moon. And I feel very happy when seeing the moon. This is my personal emotion. For myself, I'm actually coming locally, and I'm standing at the Imperial Palace of Shenyang. As we all know that Shenyang is a place of profound history with over 2,000 years old. Maybe I could just talk about the Imperial Palace. So I want to share some of the data. For example, 100, meaning that for the Imperial Palace, they have over 100 architectures with over 500 rooms in this Imperial Palace, and the size of the Imperial Palace is around 60,000 square meters. And it is a living museum for the Imperial Palace of Shenyang, even though it was built in around 1625. And it was completed in around 1639. And with the evolution of the history and also setting up the Royal Imperial Palace, all of this has been taken place in the Imperial Palace. So back in the Qing Dynasty, the Imperial Palace has a critical role. So now we are actually standing in front of a building that was alive 400 years ago to appreciate the moon. Nowadays, we have very modernized equipment to observe the moon. For example, we have the astronomical telescope, and also we have a lot of new media, social media platform to do a lot of live coverage. And for the ancient people, what they can do is to draw a picture of the moon. I still remember one of the photos I used to see is that one scholar, he is like looking up in the sky and observing the moon. This is quite a precious work. And back in the dynasty of Qianlong, and they value this kind of art. And they also changed the character and changed the scholar into himself. And he actually, at that time, we would say they Photoshop that kind of drawing, and they also put some of the tea sets. So meaning that for the emperors, they also pursuing this kind of state. They would like to observe the universe, they would like to observe the moon. Just as you mentioned, nowadays we can use a lot of modernized equipment to observe the moon, but for back in the old days, the scholars, the intellectuals, they would like to draw out a picture to record that kind of moment. Now you can see the moon has been rising really high, hanging up in the sky. And actually, it is quite late at night, but still we see a lot of people they're gathering here to appreciate the moon. As you have just saying that for the ancient people, they're drawing a picture of the moon. It is their way to explore the moon. They're actually putting a lot of emotions on the moon. But sometimes people feel a little bit sad when they're writing poems. So what is the relation to the moon? Well, actually that does not have any relations. For the ancient people, maybe at that time they're a little bit emotional. That's why they associate some of their own feelings on the moon. But today, when we are looking at the moon, we feel very happy. It's a complete different feeling. For example, when you talk about moon, people will think of the poem from Li Bai. They're actually missing their hometown, and also for Su Shi, they're also actually writing up the poem, asking like how long will the full moon appear, showing that a lot of uncertainties and concerns about their lives, and also they would like to express their homesick, and this is the way how they express themselves. However, later on, Su Shi writes a lot of other poems which reflects different kinds of emotions. Sometimes they feel very sad and they feel very lonely, and they would like to put their emotions with the moon. But nowadays we feel much happier compared to those ancient scholars. So for today, we're actually appreciating the moon in Imperial Palace. We're very close to our home, and some people actually traveling with subways. And we have internet, we can pass this special moment to people at different places. So we're seeing more compared to the ancient scholars. That is quite a different feeling. Can you see the change of the moon right now? Even though the moon is still in a constant rising position, even though we cannot capture that moment through our camera, but if we find a reference, maybe we can see more clearly. So the moon is not still at this point because it continues to rise. It feels like it's actually rising from a quaint angle. And if we can like capture this kind of footage in our camera properly, we can better keep track on this kind of moon. Well, today I feel very excited to see the moon. It is quite bright and quite big. It feels like I haven't seen the moon for such a long time. As the astronomer just told us that this year is quite lucky, and because we have already seen 3 times of supermoon. The first time we encountered the lunar eclipse, the second time it is actually the Lantern Festival, and today is the Spring Equinox, and so we have 3 chances to appreciate the moon. Why do you feel we have a special emotions attached to the moon? Well, because of different time, maybe people have different feelings. And today we can see the full moon is actually at the closest approach to Earth. So the moon we are seeing today is 40% larger than a regular moon. So the moon is quite big and quite bright. This is also a good aspiration from all of us. Excuse me, may I interrupt? I can see from your camera the moon is quite bright. I have to adjust the focal length a little bit. So what is that? This is an astronomical telescope and also attach a reflex camera. So I realize you're using some of the high power lenses. What's the degree of your lenses? Can we use that? Well, as we can see from his camera, the moon looks quite different. So you are coming here just for the supermoon, right? Even though today is very cold. But I'm an astronomy fan, that's why I would like to capture the picture, capture every moment from the moon. So I think that among the universe and the space, we human beings are quite tiny. If we observe this kind of astronomical phenomenon, I will feel everything will be okay. I feel very excited about that. So how do you feel about today? I feel very happy today. Have you observed the supermoons in January and February? Actually, last year I also observed the blue moon and also the solar eclipse. And today for the supermoon, I think it's quite bright. It's brighter than the one that I observed last year. Let's take a closer look on the moon. And actually, there are many layers on the moon. Well, first of all, you actually see some of the branches of the tree. It covers some points of the moon. And also you can see the craters on the lunar surface.
If the moon rises up a little higher and the light is darker around, we can see the moon more clearly. Now the moon we're seeing is really round and bright and stunning. It's completely not a waste of our time to wait in the cold wind. Are these the branches? Yes, these branches are just blocking one of the craters. Here's a shadow and different layers. Can you all see this? This is my first time to look at it closely. There are darker surfaces and brighter surfaces. Are these the ones that you are paying attention as well? We would focus on one point and take pictures and observe. If a plane flies by, the picture that it takes would have a completely different feeling. And these are the shadows on the moon. These are the craters in this area. We can see very micro changes on the site, and astrological enthusiasts are actually paying attention to these as well. They are more fixated on details on the moon, the convex and concave places. What is the fun in this? After all, we're all ordinary people. For astronomy, we want to explore knowledges, and we want to explore knowledges for ourselves. It's a true rare opportunity, so I wish you good luck. More and more photographers are clustering around me. I think the moon is higher up in the sky. We can feel the change on site, and a lot of citizens are gathering around the cameras. Actually, our photographers do not like to take pictures when the moon is a full moon because the light is too strong to take pictures. However, today's supermoon is a rare and good opportunity for them to record with their cameras. So all the people are here just sharing and appreciating the moon. How did ancient people observe the moon? One of the information that I learned is that in Song Dynasty, the people like to play with the moon. For example, in some records, I read that at nights where there were no clouds, people would bring out their families and gather around. It is sort of like a little ceremony for some families. For example, some modern families would go to some specific location to observe and appreciate the moon. After Song Dynasty, it was more female that appreciated the moon because there is a natural link, that is to say, between women and the moon. The moon and the interaction with the moon is a good exploration in female. especially for imaginations about Chang'e and for her beautiful outlooks and for a good aspiration in life. It is all integrated to the appreciation of the moon. For litterers in the ancient times, they seemed quite sad in their poems. However, actually appreciating the moon was a pleasant thing in those times. After observing and appreciating the moon, the general public would take a walk in the neighboring markets, and they would take a walk. So no matter from the ancient folk culture, everybody has their own moon. Some of the moons are hanging on the sky, and some of them are hanging in their hearts. They are putting their aspiration and feeling inside of appreciation of the moon. In ancient times, the commute wasn't so convenient. If families were too far apart, they would miss each other and have homesickness. There was multiple poems written about the moon, and also in Norse and South dynasties, another poem was written to embody the feeling of the poet. People's words would not come together as a long letter, but they would take out a branch on the tree and send it by mail. It's a small gesture, but with several feelings. As we all know, the famous poet Du Fu wrote several poems about the families missing each other and caring for each other's safety. When the ancient people observed and appreciated the moon, they would miss their families as well as friends, and they would care about whether they were safe. Including the common people and the liberals, everyone loved to share their feelings by observing the moon. It is as if the hearts of these people were linked together. Whatever the feeling was put into this gesture, there are multiple approaches to observe the moon, and people would give it good or sad feelings. I have a special poem from Tang Dynasty. It told a story about children influenced by adults came to understand the significance of appreciating the moon. So the children saw how the adults appreciated the moon. They did not understand the meaning and significance, but they learned the gesture, so the tradition got passed on. So this is another approach to show our good aspiration for life. We can hear some pleasant sounds coming from afar. This is a square in front of the Imperial Palace in Shenyang. Now it has become a place where people gather around to take walks, dance, and do other activities. I certainly feel that we are surpassing time and space, and this is rather harmonious. the interaction between the ancient times and the modern times, it is concordant, including we are using the modernized technology to live stream today's show. This place has not only witnessed the history but also the development of Shenyang. Now we have a better life in Shenyang, and people all strive for their lives. This does not only give us a way of surpassing time and space, it also empowers us to be more united and more happy. This is true, like the name of our city. When we first come to a city, we would be interested in its name. The ancient people thought the north side of water is desirable for cities, and now we can see we are constructing our city on our land. And this has also reversely facilitated our civilization, and all this is witnessed by this round moon today. Now, under the witness of the moon, the development of the city and the efforts put together by the citizens, I think this scenario and phenomena is really beautiful. I have one last question for you. Why is the trajectory of the moon is an arc? No matter for the sun or the moon, the trajectory is an arc because we are at a higher latitude in the northern hemisphere, so it does not go directly up. So how is your moon today? Today's moon is quite different from the usual one. We can see some shadows, and this can remind us of the stories that we were told when we were little by our grandparents about Chang'e and other. What is the difference between this time's supermoon than the last two times? The choice of location for observation can bring us different kinds of moons. This place has the distinctive features of Shenyang. We have ancient architectures just beside us, so it can feel more distinctive and comfortable. So it is estimated that this moon will rise up even further. In 1230, it will come to an apogee, and then it will fall down slowly until the 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you, Mr. Yu. I really want to make a wish under this round moon. This is beautiful, stunning, and bright, as well as round. As Mr. Yu mentioned, it will rise up even further until 12:30. And now we will leave our time to my colleague and continue the appreciation of supermoon. So my live stream ends right now.
好，以及央视新闻百度百家号同步推送的移动新媒体直播，我是央视记者丁旭。
Welcome back. I'm CCTV journalist. We will give you the live streaming from the CCTV and CGTN, and I will continue the live coverage about the supermoon. So with me we have two aspects. So the gentleman was the expert from the Astronomy Association in Tianjin, Mr. Yu. Hello everyone. You can call me Teacher Yu. And for this lady, probably you are quite familiar with her, and she's actually a deputy professor from Tianjin University. Hello everyone, I'm Wang Yi. And today we will continue to talk about moon. We will talk about the science education, and we will talk about the poems. And we will talk about why the moon keep changing its shape and why the ancient people would like to write about moon. So probably because of the location, we cannot see the moon right now. It is actually hidden behind the architectures. So maybe you can give us some explanation why the moon will change its size. Dear viewers, maybe you can see the large screen first. So this actually describes the relations between the moon, the sun, and also the earth. So you can see the yellow part, that is actually the sunlight. So for the Earth, there is a daytime and a nighttime, and for the moon, we are actually observing the moon during the evening time. We cannot see the moon in the daytime. And why we have different kinds of lunar phases? This is because the change of location of the sun, the Earth, and the moon. Let's take a look at the first one. So for the first picture, you can see that the moon is actually in between the Earth and the sun. Because at that time, it is the daytime, we cannot see the moon. Let's see the other graph. The second graph shows that in the evening, we can see the moon. However, the moon is actually receiving some of the reflecting light from the sun, and actually we are seeing the crescent. And let's see the third graph. The moon continued to move. It actually in line with the Earth and the sun. And you have a restricted view of the moon. Let's see another graph. That is a picture showing the situation of full moon, which is today. So when the full moon occurred, we will see there is a alignment between the moon, the Earth, and the sun. And because there is an angle for the orbit, for the moon rotating around the Earth and the orbit rotating about the sun. So if that is the case, when the moon rotating around the moon, when it arrives at the location between the Earth and the sun, then the solar eclipse will happen. And in the end, the moon will finish its rotation for the Earth and the sun. So that's why we have different kinds of lunar phases. So in summary, this is due to the different location of the moon, the Earth, and the sun. Well, maybe that explains why we have so many lunar phases. So can you share with us some of the poems about the moon, especially describing different kinds of lunar phases? So probably Su Shi is a good example, maybe because of his personal experience. Due to his educational background, he would like to, from time to time, put some of his thoughts on the moon. So he has a very tough political career. If he wants to release some of his burden and pressure, he would like to observe some of the astronomical phenomena, so that he would like to explain some of the things that happen around him, or to release some of the pressure. Just as we mentioned, he one day seen about the change of the moon, and he found that there are some uncertainties about the outer space. So that's why he wrote down the poem, saying that it is quite common that the people may have different kinds of emotions. Just as the same in the universe, the moon will have different kind of lunar phases. And today, it is a supermoon day. So can you maybe further elaborate the concept of the supermoon? Alright, maybe I should start with the origin of the supermoon. Actually, the concept was raised in 1979 from United States. So the concept was raised back in that time. The reason why we call it supermoon, maybe it is easy to remember and easy to pass down. However, we cannot say that the supermoon will cause some of the abnormal scenarios in the world. From a scientific perspective, it is just a very common scenario in the space. There's no correlation between the change of the moon and also some of the disasters happening in the world. Let's take a look on the screen again. On the right side, you can see like a triangle shape. This shows that the moon is actually circling on the Earth. So for 1 month, the period of the revolution is around 27 days. And we will observe the moon from the Earth. So at the beginning, we will see the moon in the shape of a crescent, and later the moon will be appear in the shape of a full moon. Alright, now we can see the moon rising up from the buildings. It's quite round and quite bright, very beautiful. I believe if Su should see this kind of moon, probably he will be filled with happiness, because this kind of moon really represents reunion. Let's go back to our graph. We just talk about the crescent and the full moon because these are the lunar phases that are observed by human beings. When the moon is rotating around the Earth, at the same time, the Earth is actually rotating around the Sun. However, the time for the Earth rotating around the Sun is not synchronized with the moon rotating around the Earth. So this time frame does not line up. This is a natural phenomenon. Maybe we can think of the classes that we taken in the high school to learn more about the revolution period, about the moon and the Earth. So let's go back to our topic to talk about the supermoon. So first of all, supermoon meaning that it's extra large in size and also it's extra bright. The reason of that is that because this moon is at a closest approach to the Earth. And also the moon will receive more refraction of the atmosphere. For the moon itself, actually it is a fixed asteroid. It will not change. However, when people seeing the reflection of the atmosphere, and the moon will show a different brightness. And we can see the moon is actually revolving with the Earth. And when it revolves, it is not following a circular orbit. It is actually following an orbit of oval. So that caused there were two places for the orbit. One is the perigee, the other one is the apogee. When we say perigee, meaning that the orbit is quite close to the Earth. And the distance between the perigee and the distance between the apogee to the Earth is quite different. So when the moon is moving to the perigee, and also if we are lucky enough, we see a full moon, that we can see a supermoon. But this is not an unusual situation, even though it is quite different from the other regular moon, but every 1 year we may experience this kind of phenomenon. So it does worth us to see it. However, this kind of supermoon has nothing to do with some of the natural disasters. For example, the tsunami, the earthquake. There's no correlations according to scientific survey. Even though there are a lot of news talking about the relations between the supermoon, the lunar phases with the natural disasters, actually there's no correlation. Now the moon has been rising up from the building. I think the speed is quite fast for the rising. Actually, for the speed of the rising of the moon depends on the rotation period of the Earth. So it is a relative speed. Let's take a look at the supermoon again. When we talk about the moon, we can think of the history, especially for the ancient people, and I believe all of you may know the legend of Chang'e and the Jade Rabbit. And the first time when I see the full moon, I take a closer look. But I cannot see where is Chang'e, but I could see the shape of the rabbit. Maybe because of the patterns of the moon. Let's take a closer look on this photo. This is a photo which describes the lunar surface of the moon. If you take a closer look, probably you can imagine that that was the shape of a rabbit. So for the right side, it looks like the head of the rabbit, and also you could see the ear of the rabbit. So maybe I should talk about the lunar surface. When you take a closer look on the moon, you probably will see on the lunar surface some areas is quite bright and some areas quite dark. It is quite easy to observe the lunar surface, even back in the old days. And they do see some of the changes in the brightness. And for some area, they may see some of the craters, and so that they name this kind of area as Shenyang. Literally means that the Shenyang Sea. So because they are saying that this kind of areas is quite dark and it is really looks like an ocean or a lake. That's why they want to name these areas. So all of these craters actually comprise the surface of the moon. In addition of this, what we call the sea area, we also have the craters on the surface of the moon. So for the craters, it is caused by the collision of the asteroids. If you find a larger picture for the moon, and you will see different kinds of terrains in the moon, just as what we see on the Earth. For example, on the Earth, we can see a lot of seas, so that in the moon, we can also find some area. There are also some sea areas, and also the craters, which we describe as the mountainous area. So it feels like the human beings actually putting some of the notion from the Earth to the moon. So why people want to put moon into literature?
So our teacher has explained to us in the scientific way, and the ancient people has seen the same moon as us today. They couldn't see the craters, the oceans, adding the seasons and sceneries at that time, as well as the background. A broader dome was formed. From perspectives, we have different kinds. This is rather different from the sun, because the sun is guiding, it is very strong and guiding, whereas the moon is mild and gentle. Then our thinking patterns would illuminate into different aspects. In the minds of poets, they could think of different things and use their imagination when they see the same scenery. Because the moon itself has no guiding patterns, it would inspire people to have different kinds of feelings. As you can see from our position, the scenery is really stunning. We are at the side of Haihe River, the mother river of Tianjin City. As we mentioned, there are seas and oceans on the moon as well. Under the lights, we can see people are walking around and appreciating the moon. Now today is a special day because today is the Spring Equinox. Is there any relation between the full moon and the solar term? Speaking of the Spring Equinox, we have to talk about the Earth itself. The solar terms has every relation with our planet. So we goes back to the geography class in high school. If the pen serves as an axis of the Earth, it has some degree. It is not standing directly up. If my microphone is the sun, when the Earth travels around the sun, it has a certain angle, and this angle is fixed. That is why the sunlight hits different kind of places in the Earth. In different solar terms, it would directly shine on different lines on the Earth. As we know, the sun rises from the east and falls in the west. But technically, there are only 2 days in a year that we can see the sun rises up from the east and falls down from the west. Only in spring and autumn equinox, the direction of the sun is slightly different. The rising and falling of the sun goes in a slightly different direction to southwest, and take an example as Tianjin. We are on the northern hemisphere. After this solar term, we will have hotter weathers. In a cultural meaning, we will have more harvest in this year. Do we have any famous poems in spring? We have a very famous one in the earlier Tang Dynasty. This poem told a scenery about the spring night. As he mentioned, the waters are converged with the sea in spring. No matter for the geographical location or the scenery, today's feeling is very similar with his poem. The wind in daytime is rather strong, but now the wind is rather mild and provides us a better condition to appreciate the moon. Now we can see the moon is at a very high point. It's huge as well as beautiful. From the picture, we can see the shadows are shaped like a hair. The direction is slightly different than the picture we just saw. The picture showed a lied down rabbit, but now we can see a stand-up one. Speaking of rabbits, I know another interesting fact. All countries have different cultures. For us Chinese, we see it like rabbit. And I remember my teacher told us the Japanese saw it differently. They thought it was a crab. The ears of the rabbit seems like the hands of the crab in Japanese eyes. No matter its culture or geological position, it is very important that we have different perspectives. Speaking of poems and different lands, we know that our ancestors gave us pretty much descriptions about the moon. What is the earliest description about the moon? Can you enlighten us? From humanity's perspective, the earliest description about the moon was in the earlier Qin dynasty. The work is called The Classic of Mountains and Rivers. It told a story about the leader of one tribe who had 2 wives. These 2 wives were very famous as well. One of them gave birth to 10 sons. Another one gave birth to 12 sons. The 10 sons were the 10 sons, and the 12 sons served as the 12 moons. So after these children were born, they had a ritual for basing them. Basically, in myths and legends, this was the earliest description about the moon, but not in a scientific approach. Speaking of viewing the moon scientifically, I have not absorbed a lot of information. As I have checked online, there are no scientific records on the moon. Maybe we can wait for the inventions and innovations from our audience. I hope that we can interact with the audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to post it to us. Now we can see the full moon with darker and brighter places. Now let's push the timeline a little bit further above to where it was born. This has a very long history. It dates back to 4.5 billion years ago. we know that the Earth is about 4.56 billion years old. Maybe we have some minor mistakes about the time, but it's more of that. The birth of the moon, the most popular saying is that the collation theory, as we can imagine, but 4.5 billion years ago, there wasn't anything on Earth. No mountains, no oceans, not even atmosphere. It was like hell. There was only lava. Now, in the distance, an asteroid wobbled through the Earth. This asteroid was the size of Mars. Although we say that is an asteroid, but the size is not that small, and it went directly to the Earth. And a traffic accident happened between it and the Earth, and after that, a lot of materials on the Earth and the debris of this asteroid was controlled by our gravity, and together they formed the moon. This is the original stage of the moon, according to scientists. This is one of the established theory. We have also other kinds of theories. We have another theory, which is the capture theory, which is that the moon came around the Earth and the Earth's gravity captured the moon, so the moon stayed around Earth and served as a satellite. However, the collation theory has more grounding and proof. That is because the constitution of the Earth is similar like our planet Earth, and other materials may come from the asteroid. And that is the reason why we have a tilt axis. The degree is 23.5. This is one of the theories by scientists. As we can see, the moon is round and attractive. The poems we have mentioned was also very fascinating. I don't know if other nicknames of the moon is understood by the audience. Maybe Professor Wang can enlighten us about a few. Actually, there are over 100 nicknames for the moon. But this is not like naming people. And all these nicknames have some relation with the earlier legends. We can generalize it as two animals. The first one is the jade hare. The second one is toad. Also, we have different kinds of things. So along this line, maybe we can have some nicknames for the moon. So Chaoluo has its own nickname for the moon, called Suo. So the celestial maids all were very plate clothes, and another name is 环娥. Also, we have 月娥. This one is rather simple. The two animals, hares, and the hares are different than seeing a moon. It's seeing the animal. When we use it to describe the moon, we have little changes. Maybe change its color, gold and silver.
With different meteorological conditions, maybe the name will be changed. So, and also we will change the character. As we just talked about Su Chan, and also we have a Su E. These are two different kind of names. And also for the rabbits, we also have different kind of names, using different characters to express them. And also for the plants, the tree, we also have another name for that. That is what we call Dan Gui and Zhe Gui, or we would say it Gui Gong. These are the nicknames for the plants and some of the creatures on the moon. And we also see some of the questions from the netizen. They're asking how did Chang'e travel to the moon? Probably she steal some of the medicine and fly up to the moon. And for Wu Gang, so how does he go to the moon? Maybe you can share with us some of the stories and some of the legend. Yes, indeed, it is a legend or fairy tale that we say. Even though the reason is not unique. And when we talk about Wu Gang cutting on the tree, this is one of the legends. And you have different versions in different regions. Well, that is easy to explain because in different regions, they will see different patterns, different shapes of the moon. That's why the legends will change accordingly. For Wu Gang, as we talk about, she's cutting the trees, and according to the legend, he is not a diligent student. He always a lazy bone. And also the emperor asked him to cut the trees as a way of practice. However, the tree cannot be cut, so that's why Wu Gang have to practice all over the day. This is actually a punishment to Wu Gang. Well, it feels like it is a sad story. It is not a joyful story. This is quite normal because for the moon itself, it is not up to the maximum brightness. So that's why we do not have a joyful story associated with the moon. And actually, for the story of Chang'e, it is also a tragedy, a sad story. There were two versions for Chang'e's story. The first one is about the relation between Chang'e and Hou Yi. And also, during this time, there's a third party and forced Chang'e to get the drugs. So by accident, Chang'e would take the medicine and take the drug, and she went up to the moon. And the second version is that Chang'e doesn't have a good relation with Hou Yi, and she is actually felt for another guy because she felt for Zhang Yizi. and at that time there is a natural disaster happening. And God from the heavens saying that if anyone who can shoot down one of the sun, and Chang'e will be married to that person. But that was a tragedy between Chang'e and Zhang Yizhi. And that comes to another character, the rabbit. And the legend is that Zhang Yizhi actually turned himself into a rabbit, so he can accompany by the Chang'e. So one of the versions is that on one day, Hou Yi is actually hunting, is go hunting, and he found a rabbit. And the Chang'e found out when she looking at the rabbit, she felt somewhat similar. And she asked a question to the rabbit, "Are you Zhang Lizi?" And the rabbit kept nodding its head, and also it is quite sad. And this is another story about the Chang'e and the moon. And also we have a series of stories associated with the moon. And also we have legend about the god from the moon. As we can see, for the ancient people, they always associate a lot of stories and a lot of their affections with the moon. And that's why people always talk about how long will the full moon appear, because full moon represents reunion. It can remove all the barriers and to have all the family members reunion together. As we just talked about Chang'e and Yu Tu, the rabbit, and people sometimes believe that there are Chang'e and rabbit. Well, maybe that comes to the lunar exploration projects from China, the Lunar rover. All right, let's take a photo. This one is the Yu Tu 2, which is the J Rabbit 2. And this is actually taken up to the moon from Chang'e 4. And this is carried from the Long March carrier. And that's why we say that the Chang'e and the Yu Tu are actually landing on the far side of the lunar surface. From the lunar exploration, we have like 3 stages. The first stage is exploration. The second is landing on the moon. The third stage is that we will try to stay on the lunar surface. So the first one is a simply exploration, and the second is a landing, just land like other like lunar exploration projects. And we would like to land on the lunar surface. And the third, we talk about landing and also to do some projects on the lunar surface. At this stage, we are still doing the lunar exploration. We are actually already complete the phase of circling around the moon, meaning that we send out spacecraft that will be circling around the moon, and we also detect some of the parameters of the moon and to get some of the sample back of the Earth. That is the number 1 stage. And the second stage is that we land on the lunar surface. That's why we say we have the Chang'e 4 rover lander and the Yu Tu landing on the lunar surface. So let's take a look at the landing site for the Jade Rabbit 2 and the Chang'e 4. Let's take a look. On the right side, you can see a little cross, and we identify that place as Hong 1. Well, this is the place when the Jade Rabbit 1 land. And we also name that as Guanghan and this is actually carries the Chinese tradition. So when you look at the lunar surface, probably you can spot where is that place. And the U-21 is actually in a dormant situation. For the Drake Rabbit 2, actually it was landed on the far side of the moon. This is a place what we call the von Karman crater. It is also on the right side. And also we have a cross there. This is the landing site for the U-22, which is the von Karman crater. And we also name that place as the Tianhe base, meaning that we are actually creating a new chapter in the lunar exploration. You can see for this station Tianhe, it is in the central area with 3 craters. The first one is called Zhinü and the other one is Hegu. And this is also a name of a star. And also another crater, we name it as Tianjin. However, this Tianjin is not equivalent to the Tianjin city in China. This is actually a name of the star sign in the universe. And on the left side, we actually found a mountain and we call it Mountain Tai. So that you can see we have a complete site cluster in the far side of the lunar surface. So we have the mountain and also we have the 3 craters, and we also have a station Tianhe on the far side of the moon. Talk about the far side of the moon. I'm not sure if you realize that on the near side you can see the sea areas. However, for the far side of the moon, the terrain is quite complicated. You cannot find a plain ground. Because of the tidal effect, from the Earth we can only observe one side of the moon. If there are some collision of the asteroid, this kind of asteroid will not collide onto the near side of the moon. That's why many of those asteroids will collide onto the far side of the moon. Maybe later on we can talk about more about the tidal influences. As we have just talked a lot about the knowledge about the astronomy, and let's take a look on the sky. And today we have a very clear sky, no cloud, basically. Maybe after the rain, we can see all the clouds are actually disappear. We have a very bright moon hanging up in the sky. And as we talk about the ancient people, they have been writing a lot of poems about the moon. So moon will actually trigger a lot of affections for the people, especially homesick. So what are the other affections that has been carried by the moon? Well, talk about the moon, there are many kinds of affections. You have just talked about the homesick. Homesick is one kind of affection. The moon itself will bring a lot of affections to our people, so homesick is one side. So just as Li Bai always saying that when we look up the sky and look at the moon, you will think of your hometown. That is because of the shape of the moon. It is quite round. And this is quite unusual for the round, because for the sun you cannot see that clearly, but when you see a round moon, you will think of a reunion. And especially in Tang Dynasty, many poets write up like poems about the moon. And for Du Fu, he always write about for the moon. He always refer that to the moon in his hometown. Except for homesick, for the moon itself, it is quite dynamic, and sometimes people can attach their own emotions on the moon. So for Li Bai, also saying that sometimes he would like to drink with the moon, and also he would like to dance under the moonlight. So sometimes he's saying that he would like to propose a toast to the moon, but actually it is himself. Probably he's actually drinking alone with the moon, but he would like to describe a scenario that our people can actually interact with the moon. So as we can see from his poem, he always saying that I would like to have a drink with the moon, but he never write down he would like to drink with the sun. The most dynamic part is that the moon actually changes every day. You cannot see the same moon every day. And also it also follows some kind of principles, some patterns. So you can still follow some of the patterns for the moon. You can follow some kind of pattern, but still you will see different kinds of lunar phases. But for sun, it's quite different, because every day you see the same kind of sun, and also the star.
This is the difference of celestial being in lunar patterns. And then people would have a bit different feelings towards it. This is just one side. Apart from the perspectives, people feel that the moon is a good partner, someone they can talk to, someone they can play with. Like just we mentioned, people drink to the moon sometimes. And in one poem, the moon travels together with the poet into the far distance. In cloudy days, we cannot see the moon, but that's just another story. Don't you think this is amazing? It doesn't appear because of people's preferences. If you don't like me, then I would be like a dog. It would not go near people if people do not like it. The moon is reasonable and close to people. This provides condition for people to talk to the moon. It can be a good listener. Also, it can express the people's feeling to miss someone or miss something. There's not a very scientific theory about the formation and origin of the moon. There was one poem about the story where the moon comes up in the bank of river. Now on site we can see a lot of citizens are taking pictures with their phones.
还有一种时空的概念，他问的就是月亮什么时候出来，而这个人又是第一个是什么时候出来？基本上有人的时候肯定是有月亮了，但是人不明白月亮是什么时候出来的，他也不知道月亮比他早，肯定不比他晚，所以这个时候就涉及了一个宇宙之始的问题。可以说从人类有文明开始，月亮就有了。那么月亮自然也有条件就成为一个历史和时空的岁月的见证者，是吧？所以你看咱们诗中就说秦时明月汉时关，是吧哈？哎，它秦时明月汉时关，这一下就把这个时空感呢就承载了起来。是这样。
我们看到啊，就是有很多网友跟我们在进行互动，同时呢也是在进行签到，比如说是这个很多的地方，也有很多网友在问啊，说泰安的月亮呢，说云南的月亮去哪儿了？那可能
the moon in different places. For example, in Tai'an or in Yunnan province, maybe some restrictions about the weather cannot allow people to see the moon, but you can tune in with us to see the supermoon tonight. And we have another question about whether the moon is round. Here about the roundness, the moon is not a perfectly round pattern. To add it with time and space, humankind have an appreciation for roundness. In the ancient Greek, people appreciate the roundness and they admire it. But here in China, a perfect roundness is very rare. But why can we see it as a perfect orb? Because the shape is slightly different from an orb. For example, an asteroid has different shapes. However, the size of the moon is rather huge, so we can see it as an orb. Because of the light reflected by the moon, we can see the shape as round, and it can fill up the gaps. Just now, I heard Professor Wang's statements about the moon. As a teacher, I have learned a lot as well. I was in liberal arts in high school, so when I was little, every time I saw the moon, I thought, the moon that we're seeing right now, is it the same one that our ancestors saw? The modern people and ancestors 500 years ago, or our ancestors 5,000 years ago, or 15,000 years ago, or even greater in time, is all these moon the same one? The moon does not only give us perplexion about space, it also gives us some deliberation about time. Maybe we can go further back in time when the moon just formed. I don't know if you are clear with this fact. The moon is not always as this big in size. It has changed over times. And the changes are not about the perigees and apogees. The size is actually bigger. If we have time, we have the chance to take a time spaceship back into the ancient times. The distance between the Earth and Moon were just 25,000 kilometers, and now we have 38,000 kilometers between the Earth and the Moon. Back then, one day has only 6 hours, so the self-reservation of the Earth is quicker. Therefore, the moon is a crucial breaker for the moon. One day only possessing 6 hours is not enough for us. Because of different functions of forces, now we have 24 hours, one day. Here I feel a little bit of loneliness because the distance has been stretched out even longer. And the moon is actually edging away from us by 3.8 centimeters every year. So in later times, maybe billions of years later, the moon will be even smaller because the distance will be longer. So from the distance of mankind or the cosmos, it both changed. That being said, every opportunity that we can see the full moon should be cherished, because the moon that we can see is smaller and smaller. However, in our lifetime, the smaller moon can only exist in our minds and imagination. It can only be detected by scientists. Our audiences has been asserting that the shape of the moon is an elliptic sphere. Audiences have said that the moon is only brighter in one's hometown. Maybe this audience we have is homesick right now. I don't know if he is in his hometown. However, the poem he quoted is very deep. Although we have different poems for moons, but with different location and different cultures, different people's feeling towards the moon are various as well. We have different feelings for all the things around us. So this sentence bears the most fundamental feelings for mankind. The feelings for families and friends. Now we are at the Tianjin Station Square. A lot of people are taking up their phones to record this moment of the supermoon. This is really beautiful. One round moon hanging in the night sky, and the lights of buildings are underneath it, with the river just reflecting the sceneries on the bank. It is even more stunning. If our ancient famous poets as Li Bai and Du Fu can surpass time and travel to the modern times, I kind of imagine what they feel. Maybe they will not be feeling the loneliness anymore. They could feel that people can communicate and write poems together.
好，那我们今天啊，就是跟大家聊了很多关于月亮的科普的问题，聊了什么是超级月亮，聊了聊这个
about the moon as well as the supermoon,
啊各方面的事情，
and
也聊了
jade
聊这个
hair
古诗词
and 嫦娥.
那么我们
Also
今天的
some
这个直播呢
ancient poems.
到这里就
So
马上就
the
要
live
结束
stream
了
is about to
很快呢
wrap
会有
up
我们的
today.
另一组同事来跟大家继续
Quickly, we
聊
will
月
have
亮的
another
故
group
事
of colleagues
好，那我们
to
今
talk
天
about
的
the
直播
stories
就到这里。
about the moon.
谢谢
Okay,
大家。
that wraps up our live stream. Thank you.
Hello everyone, we will continue our relay live broadcast. Now we are at the Yunnan Observatory of Chinese Academy of Science. We have several experts with us, Mr. Wang Jiankun, and also he is very expertized in the astronomical phenomenon, and also an expert from the wireless connection from the astronomical phenomenon. So here we can come in here to get a best view of the observation of the moon, and also we have a specialized equipment, the astronomical telescope. Can you give us some introduction about this telescope? This is 200 mm diameter focal length telescope, and it also equipped with the high power lenses to shock the moon. So actually, in Kunming City, from 7:40 p.m., the moon rises gradually from the east. And actually, if we look closer to the moon, you can see the color of the moon is a little bit gold. So maybe we can see that through our high power lenses of the telescope. Let's take a look. Very beautiful. It's like a golden color of the moon. I think probably this is partially covered by a tree. So we would like to take a photo of the moon. I think the moon is partially covered by the tree. Maybe later we can get a clearer picture. Actually, we are at the second story of the Yunnan Observatory of Chinese Academy of Science. Later, we will use a larger size of the astronomical telescope. Well, currently, because of the location, we cannot use the high power lenses to observe the moon. Maybe just a few moments, we can come back and get a closer look for the moon. So, Mr. Wang is also an expert as a photographer. So many astronomy fans, they would also like to take photos about the moon. Can you give them some tips? Well, that depends what kind of scenario you would like to capture. Sometimes you can just use your camera to capture the photo of the moon. And I realized that some of the astronomy fans, they are using a tripod. They also use the reflect lenses to capture the moon. Well, you have to add a special equipment, so you can better stabilize the rack, the tripod, so that the whole picture will be high resolution. This is a specialized equatorial telescope. And there's another type of a large size equatorial telescope, so that can be used to get some photos of the election bodies. So first of all, you can get an initial photo image, and later on you can use different kind of processing software to edit the photo. So why today's moon is a little bit gold? Well, the moon has just risen from the horizon, and because of the refraction of the atmosphere, some of the light of the sun are actually reflected on the moon. That's why you can see the moon is a little bit reddish. Can you see the moon? I can see a big moon. Is it the same? No. What's the difference? So if I look at the moon from this telescope, it's a little bit small. So what is the degree for the high power lenses? So we have to consider the diameter of the telescope, and also we have to consider the focal length. So for the high power lens, it's over 60 degrees, and also we can adjust the focal length. But actually pressing one button, we can change the focal length quite easily. As we just say that the moon has just risen from the horizon, maybe after 25 degrees, in 10 minutes, we can use another telescope to have a better observation of the moon. So by taking this opportunity, maybe we can appreciate some of the photos that has been shot by Mr. Wang. So for this place is another observatory area. So this is a large size of the telescope. Later we will use this telescope to observe the supermoon. We have a laptop here. Let's take a look on some of the photos that have been shot by Mr. Wang. So we are actually using a remote photography. We're also using the astronomical telescope to capture the moon and selection bodies. Actually, I'm using a smaller size of the telescope and a reflected telescope to take these photos. And we actually put all of these into layers, and after processing, we can get this kind of editing photo. It took me around over 10 hours to shoot all of these photos. It takes me around like 60 or 17 hours, and some of the photos it takes me around like 20 hours. So I think if the weather condition is good and the air is clear, you can actually take similar photos. But that depends on the properties and the functionalities of your cameras and the telescope. If the focal lenses is strong enough, you can also take photos like that. Do you have any videos to share? Well, I don't have any video on here. We always take photos and we do not record any videos. So what is the selection standards for you to shoot this kind of photos? Well, we are actually choosing different shapes of the nebula. For example, this one looks like a hamlet. This is also a nickname that we gave to this labeling. And if you use the larger size and a stronger focal length telescope, you can actually getting a shot about the Milky Way. And also you can reflect some of the terrains of the moon surface. Have you ever shot any photos about the moon? Yes. I will take a holistic photo of the moon, and sometimes I focus on details and specific areas of the moon. Believe it or not, you have to take over 10 hours to shoot such kind of photos. It's quite hard work. And for this kind of photos, you can use a tripod and also a reflex camera, and also you may have a high definition or high power lenses. So you need to have a long focal length and also have a high power lenses to make the photo shot. So actually, when using the telescope, you just use it as a high power lens. So this is the Photoshop software that we have to add in all of these photos. Can you get a photo of the Queqiao satellite, relay satellite? I'm afraid not, because the definition is not strong enough. We cannot make that happen, because the distance between the moon and the Earth is around like 380,000 kilometers. As the relay satellite is quite small, it's quite difficult for us to capture the relay satellite. And sometimes you may see some of the astronauts and the fixed stars actually flying up to the sky. How can you identify whether that is an astronaut or an International Space Station? Well, if there is a flight, probably you would see the light on the two sides. It's our flashing lights, but it is a space station. It will be constantly lighting up, and it is quite different from a fixed star and an aircraft. And also we have a software to track when the International Space Station will come across this area. Alright, now let's try out the high power lenses in this larger size telescope. Alright, now the telescopes start operating, and it has actually a satellite map to identify the location of the moon. This is the moon. If the telescope can capture the image, so the device and the equipment will start operating. And also, all of the equipment will start automatically.
By this opportunity, I want to introduce to you.
In
the past few years, China has 4 observatories, one in Beijing, one in Nanjing. Another 2 are in Shanghai and Yunnan province. Because of historical backgrounds, the Yunnan Observatory was established in 1938. Back then, it was the only observatory in China. And then it traveled, it was relocated to the south side, which is in Yunnan province. And the research work was insisted even in the period of anti-Japanese war. Later, the observatory was then again relocated back into Shanghai, but this one has been kept in Yunnan province after the establishment of the PRC. Now we have become a branch under the Nanjing Observatory. And the government has officially initiated to establish a multidisciplinary scale observatory in Yunnan province. As we can see, the moon is rather close to the surface of the Earth. This one is normally not working because the degree is not exact. Maybe in 5 minutes. By this opportunity, maybe we can introduce this. Do we have a lunar equipment? The lunar equipment is on that side. Actually, supermoon is a normal and ordinary phenomenon. It happens once or twice every year. And today marks the final supermoon in this year. It is the perigee point together with the full moon phenomenon, then we would call it supermoon. The moon has influences on tides on Earth and other impacts as well. Will this impact us anyhow? Not any major ones. In full moon phases, the influence on tides, our planet is rather huge. The interference that we get from the moon or the sun, the tide has gained different kinds of powers, and the waves and tides have appeared different extent of influence. It's around 5 minutes. As we understand, the moon travels around the Earth. It is a natural satellite for the Earth. Then we can circle back to the supermoon phenomena. There are other perigees as well. If the perigee coincides with the full moon phase, this phenomena, called the supermoon, would appear. The diameter would increase 70% and the brightness would increase 30%. However, by naked eye, we cannot distinguish. This year, we have met with an important solar term, the Spring Equinox. 10 years ago, or around 2000, a phenomenon like this appeared. The next time would require 10 years of waiting again. Supermoon coincides with the spring equinox. This year we have a very slight chance. The sunlight goes directly on the equator. and both hemispheres have equal night and day times. And the northern and southern hemisphere are equal in times as well. Why is the position of the moon different between yesterday and today? Yesterday, the moon was not full. This year, around 5:30, the moon is at its fullest.